Girl, I'm about to have a panic attack. I did the work, it didn't work. That truth, it hurts. That damn, it hurts. That lovey-dovey shit, was not a fan of it. I'm good with my friends, I don't want a man, girl. I'm in my bed, I'm way too fine to be here alone. On other hand, I know my worth, and now he calling me. Why do I feel like this? What's happened to me? Oh, oh, oh. Am I ready? Ain't no doubt. Am I ready? What you talking about? Am I ready? You gon' figure it out. To be loved, to be loved. Am I ready? You deserve it now. 'Cause I want it. That's what I'm talking about. Am I ready? You gon' figure it out. To be loved, to be loved.
How are you doing, OMTC fam? It has been a minute. I am here and ready to talk about this goofy goink of a camera. Goofy goink. That sounds inappropriate and I don't even know why. This is the NONS SL42 Mark II. There are two versions of this, the original and then this Mark II version, which changed some things and implemented some different things in a way that feels like don't bother with the Mark I. The Mark II has a much improved viewfinder, which we'll get into, as well as it coming with this NONS lens extender, the NLE, which absolutely you should have for this body. And it's well made. It's, you know, it's still plasticky on the outside, but it has real glass, so it's not like some BS, you know, optical quality extender. You put this on the body, and this is an EF to EF mount, so it's not changing the mount of your lenses. But what it does do is eliminate, or at least seek to eliminate, the vignetting that occurs when your lenses go directly onto this body, because this shoots Instax mini-sized film. Instax mini-sized film is larger than a 35mm strip of film for which these lenses are made. So it essentially takes these, extends them away from a body to give more of a sort of medium format coverage, and as a result, diminishes the vignette to some degree. There is still vignette there, and we'll talk about that a bit more, but it definitely helps. So I highly recommend having this if you get this. Now, I have a bunch of old Olympus glass, I have Nikon glass, I have Pentax glass, and I want to use my old lenses. This is a Zuiko 28mm 2.8, and so I have an EF to OM mount adapter, and I am putting this on the body. And this is the lens that I have found to be the most successful of all the lenses I've tested. I really like the 28mm 2.8 on this from Olympus. It works a treat. And so this has been my setup for the majority of the time that I've been shooting this. I have shot it with a number of lenses. I tried a bunch of different focal lengths out just to try to find one that got rid of the vignette to the greatest degree, and this is the most success that I had with the lens lineup that I own. This camera goes from bulb mode to 250th of a second. It is an on-off USB charge. Where's my USB charge here? Oh, down here. USB charged on-off switch is right here. And then you also have a very nice feature, I must say, this little LED screen up here. So I'm gonna try to get this focused. This gives you a little indication of the information you need to know. So there is a built-in light meter in here. It's pretty decent. It's not like a spot meter, but it is definitely going to give you a good reading for, like, if you're on the run and you just want to pick up a quick shot. It will work for you. However, Instax film has very limited dynamic range. So I still prefer to use a handheld meter, and I always bring that with me for the most part when I'm shooting this, just to really like meter my highlights to my shadows, find the average so that I'm not trying, you know, just making sure that the image that I want to capture is within the 9 stops of dynamic range, 9 to 10 stops of dynamic range that Instax film can provide, and then, you know, shoot to my heart's content. So that's how I shoot this camera, but there is a good averaging light meter in here if you need it. It also displays the number of shots you have left when you're shooting a pack of Instax mini film. 10 shots here, so it gives you a readout of how many shots you have left, which is wonderful if it works. And we'll talk more about that too. Okay, the other odd, fun, crazy part, this has a really interesting lens cock, okay? So you go like that, or the mirror. So you do that for the mirror, then, oh geez, I actually have film in here. So there is a mirror here. You are able to see your frame through the pentaprism in the viewfinder. It is a good viewfinder. You can really focus with its viewfinder, which apparently with the Mark I was not the case. The Mark I apparently was very hard to gauge your focus, and with something like this where you're gonna probably want to shoot fast glass in an indoor setting, you really want to be able to see what you're doing. So this I had no issues focusing whatsoever. It was a really nice experience from that perspective. However, the NLE, NONS lens extender, does put a crop on your lens. So this is a 28mm lens. It puts a 1.8 or 1.5. It puts a 1.8 times crop on your lens, and it does then also require 2 more stops of light. There is a hot shoe, so you can shoot flash. I did shoot some flash, manual flash on here, which is great. Another thing to consider is Instax film is ISO 800, right? And you're not gonna push and pull Instax film the way you do like negative film, so just don't put that in your head. But it's ISO 800, which means you are definitely going to want some ND filters for your lenses if you are shooting this in California sun. I just didn't take this out in full bright sunlight because I just didn't have any ND filters at the time. I was traveling with this. I used it quite a lot in New York when I was there. I brought it, of course, in my very contradictory nature. I brought this film camera to a Digicam Love meetup here in LA recently.
I think this is the biggest turnout we've ever had at Digicam Walk. And also, like, thank you to Allie for bringing out so many people, like, from her network also.
And I, of course, also brought some digital cameras, but it was great to just have this with me as well and shoot some friends who were so amazing and came out to that meetup. It was a super fun meetup, and yeah, I brought this along with me, and it was great. So I really got to put it through its paces. Weight-wise, this thing actually is pretty substantial, but I heard everybody talking about how heavy it was, and I was like, oh my gosh, when I picked it up, it's like, this is not heavy. Like, it's like 510 grams. It's definitely lightweight construction, plasticky, but you know, I give NONS a lot of credit for even making this. It's very niche. It's obviously like, they've done a nice job. There's like a little, you know, design touch here and there. I'm just glad to see anybody making these cameras, to be honest, because I love my off-the-shelf Instax point and shoots, but they're all gonna shoot at like f8 and like have the same look and feel. And you can really do something unique with this camera. It is very differentiated in that way. I've had a Polaroid 110A and a 110B modified to have a back on, you know, those bodies, so it has like, you know, a good glass multi-element lens, and they're expensive. They're like $800 a pop. I'm also thinking about other ones. I had this incredible back, unbelievable back for my RB67. Quality was mwah, to die for. But it was also expensive, and you then have to have an RB67 to go with it. You know, if I was using that camera regularly, I would definitely go that way, but it's nice to have like a standalone Instax only kind of experience like this, and then you just throw another Digicam in your bag and you're good to go. So let me show you how it works in practical terms. You have loaded the back here. I have one shot left here, so we'll spend this and then we'll get into the back. But you load your pack in here, right? Your Instax mini pack. Get it in here, and then you are going to press this button, hold it for like 1.5 seconds, and the dark slide is gonna come out, and then you are good to go. You do need to charge this camera. This motor will not eject film if the battery is dead, so you definitely wanna have some juice in the body, but it does use like a Panasonic battery. The battery works really well, lasts long. The meter on the top will tell you like where you are in your battery power. I didn't find it to be super reliable, to be very frank. But in fairness, I was also like, my camera died way after I expected it to. So just like, if you're charging it semi-regularly, you're gonna be fine. But if it goes in a closet for like a month and you pull it out, charge it before you go shooting, okay? So then you take this lever, you charge it like that, or advance it like that, and then your mirror opens up. You won't even be able to focus on anything until you've cocked the shutter, which lifts up the prism, and then you can focus and shoot. So then you look, if you're gonna use the light meter on the body, you're going to set the shutter speed that you want. So let's say I wanna do a 60th of a second. Then I'm gonna look at my subject, look at my meter here, and it's saying I want an f9.5 to shoot at a 60th of a second. Let's say I want to shoot at more like f4. Okay, cool. So I know I'm going to have to bump my shutter speed. It only goes up to 2/50th of a second, right? So just keep that in mind, and that's where your ND filters are going to come in handy. We are golden, f4 here. Click. Now I don't know if you can hear that, but there are two clicks that happen when you press the shutter. There's the dunk, which is, I don't know, something, the mirror, but then there's the actual, and that second sound is a sound where you've actually taken the photograph. So if you have someone modeling for you or you're taking a picture of a scene, just know, keep the camera still until you hear that second little soft dampening of the shutter, which actually means the image was taken. Once again, you're gonna hold this down and the image will eject. Shake it like a Polaroid picture. Don't do that. Don't do that. Myth. And it will say here, you know, 0 frames or 0 shots left, and then you should be good to go. So you open the back and then you can take out the cartridge. Okay, so here's one of my criticisms of this camera. There's film in here still. So this is where I'm gonna start to get a little bit frustrated. And I don't wanna talk about this because I'm so happy that anyone's even making this thing. But you can't improve a product if you don't take it to task where it needs to be taken to task. I have had this particular incident where I thought the cartridge was fully spent and then I take it out and there are shots left in there. That's happened multiple times and it's super frustrating because Instax film isn't cheap. No film is cheap these days. But you know, I don't want to be losing shots because I think that maybe it's done and it tells me that it's done. So my only advice there is just keep shooting it until it's absolutely spent, and every time you press it, nothing comes out. But that leads to my other criticism, which is things do jam in here, and I will hit this button and it'll go for hours, and I'm like, oh, okay, there's no more film in there, clearly, because it's just like, I'm just waiting for it to eject and nothing's coming out. And then I open it, and again, there is still film in there. So the motor, it's not the motor itself, but it's the eject functionality is somewhat inconsistent, unreliable, and ultimately very, very upsetting. The actual experience of shooting it is just not dialed yet. I feel confident they can do it, and I'm really actually genuinely interested in getting the SL660, which is the latest model, to see if they've sort of gotten around any of those issues. But those two things are really near deal breakers for me. Vignetting is the other thing that is very hard for me to get past. It's fine in certain photos, you know, there's a nice effect to it, but to not have the option of getting rid of that vignette, particularly when you've got like a nice white wall behind, you know, a group of kids that you stopped on the street like a creepy old lady. In that circumstance, it'd be nice not to have a vignette on it. Just, I don't know, maybe it makes it less creepy. I'm really happy they created the NONS lens extender. It's great to have, but it doesn't quite do the trick. It also is a little bit frustrating to get that 1.8 crop factor on there, as well as the 2 stops of light loss. Because what that does in your experience of shooting it is through the viewfinder, that crop is going to mean that you are seeing a little portion of the frame that you're ultimately composing, which is great for focusing, not great for like precise composing. That being said, I will say the 28 millimeter on here with the 1.8 crop is about 50 millimeters, and that does align with the viewfinder pretty well. So I feel like this is probably the closest you can get. NONS does sell their own version of a lens to accompany this. It's a 35 millimeter and a 50 millimeter. So I guess they're kind of recommending those focal lengths as well. The 28 just seemed to work best for me. And as I already mentioned, the ND filter factor, like you're gonna want ND filters with this if you wanna shoot outdoor in bright light, which would be awesome. Like if you got like a pretty strong ND filter and you had 1.4 lenses and you shot this wide open outdoors, it could be a really nice effect with like really like dramatic fall off and all that sort of stuff. I didn't do that because I didn't want to buy an ND filter for these lenses just for this camera. I also just like kind of ran out of time, frankly. But I do think that that could be really fun. Additionally, I would say that the body itself, I've mentioned it before. I'm, again, so happy they're making it, but the body is definitely, you know, I don't know if this is gonna stand the test of time, if you will. You know, I'd give it probably 5 years, maybe, with upkeep 10 years if you're lucky, but it also has the integrated battery, which is great for practical reasons in terms of just being able to USB charge and go, but eventually batteries brick, and I don't know if you want to dig into the innards here to replace the Panasonic battery. But again, I don't think they're thinking that this is going to last for a million years, so you probably won't have to deal with that because those batteries can actually go, you know, 10 years and then they're toast, and by then this thing is probably gone with it. I'd also say this like shutter thing is like less than ideal. It definitely feels a little jarring here. It gets your finger gets stuck on the ledge here. I mean, not a huge deal, but kind of just a little fiddly. And I would say just the overall experience of this thing is a little fiddly. You know, you have to turn it on down here, then you have to crank the shutter to lift the mirror to shoot the picture. And then there's like the two-step clunk clunk to capture it. It's just not as seamless as, you know, it could be. What I do like though is, for example, in that instance, you can do as many multiple exposures on this as you would like. It's pretty cool. I am not much of a multiple exposure shooter. Blah, blah, blah. I am not much of a multiple exposure shooter, but I think it's really neat that you can take a photograph. Here, we'll just do it. It's all bonkers anyway because, you know, my cartridge was not spent, so we'll just see what this is. Okay, and then we'll eject that and see what we get. So multiple exposures, cool. The last thing that I will say on the negative side is the price. But like I said, there are other competitors out there that like make bespoke bodies. Like you can go to Option 8 and have multiple different cameras modified to shoot Instax film, and those are great. And if you supply him all of the parts, it can be in this price range, but otherwise it's gonna be, you know, with the camera and all the parts and the lens and all that sort of stuff, it's gonna be upwards of $800. So this is kind of a bargain actually when you think about it. It's $400 new, and on the used market anywhere from $200 to $300. So for what you're getting, I actually think it's priced quite well, but it is definitely on the pricey side for what is kind of a playful medium. I had a lot of fun shooting with it, and I think that that is ultimately what you have to remember. This is an Instax camera that shoots the most unique Instax camera shots that you can get because of that shallow depth of field and that like pin sharp focus that you can get from really great vintage glass. And you can adapt anything onto this. M42 mount lenses, you can get Pentax lenses, Olympus lenses, Minolta lenses. You can put whatever you want on this and it's gonna be beautiful. The one thing you do need to have is an aperture ring because you are gonna set your aperture on the actual physical aperture ring in order to, this is shutter priority, right? So you're putting the priority on your shutter speed and then balancing out your exposure triangle with the aperture ring on the lens. So that's the only qualifier. Ironically, EF lenses don't usually have aperture rings, but the reason they went with that mount is because it is the most universal in terms of adapting glass. So you can, it's the widest, so you can adapt down to multiple formats. It takes the most universal film available today, and it's the Instax film. And this thing sells, Instax film sells gangbusters. I also just love how kind of throw it to the wind the process is. Like, not the process of shooting it. I don't love the process of shooting it. But when you actually shoot the shot, you don't know what you're gonna get, and you just kind of like roll with it, and you can do all kinds of weird manipulations. You can scratch the film, you can do all this stuff that I didn't get into. But there are a bunch of artists out there doing all this stuff to modify their Instax film, and I think that's really, really cool. And like I said, I have had a number of other cameras, a lot of Instax and Polaroid cameras. I will say that the frustrations that I have with this camera were very much shared by all those other cameras, and most of them were a lot more expensive. So at the end of the day, if you accept what this is, an Instax instant film camera from a entrepreneurial, creative, and amazing startup type of company that's making this for the market that is very small ultimately, but just wants a new and exciting way to express themselves creatively, I'm like, this thing is a ringer. Like, this is awesome. Wait, ringer is not the right word. Hats off to NONS, like a company that I assume does not have like buckets of money to spend on R&D and QC, and they put out this product. So that is the NONS SL42. Such a great camera, super fun. Again, super frustrating and full of quirks. So go in, eyes open, but if you know what you want and you like what you see from these photographs, then this is a camera for you. So speaking of cameras, the next camera that I'm going to be shooting is going to be, by popular demand, as voted through my last video as well as on Instagram, the Sony RX100 Mark I. I believe this was from 2012 because it was the year that I met my husband, and that was the first camera we shot together. Lots of stories, lots to get into there. And so I'm really excited to pull that out. Additionally, last thing that I will say, I don't know if you caught on, but I have way too many cameras, and so I'm going to do something. I have tried to sell cameras in the past. I think it was just challenging on the platform that I had chosen, so I'm just going straight old school. I'm going to eBay. I've got a new store up on eBay, and when I review a camera, it will go up on the store so that I can try to make room for more cameras, because it's just literally gotten to the point where I cannot add anything more to my collection. So the NONS SL42 will be going up there. I will not be pricing these cameras. These will be sold no reserve. You guys bid what you want, put the value of it that you think is worth it to you, and may the best man win. Like, I just want to remove myself from this as much as possible and just get those cameras out there to all of you to be able to shoot and give more life. So link will be down in the description below. We'll see how it all goes. Until then, I will be shooting the Sony RX100. Go follow me on Instagram, all the places, join our Digi Discord, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.